Wisdom of the Middle Way. Nagarjuna's Mulamadhyamakarika. Translation and Commentary by J. L. Garfield. Part 2, The Text and Commentary. Chapter 13, Examination of Compounded Phenomena. In this chapter, Nagarjuna begins to develop the idea of emptiness more explicitly. Up to this point, he has been arguing that phenomena are empty, but has not been characterizing emptiness itself, or its relation to entitihood or to conventional reality, except by example and by implication. At this point, through a general discussion of all compounded phenomena, that is, all phenomena constituted of parts or brought into being dependent upon causes, he argues explicitly both that emptiness is the lack of essence and that emptiness itself is wholly negative in character. It is not an essence that things have instead of whatever essence naive common sense or sophisticated reification might have thought they had rather. It is the total lack of essence or inherent existence. This is, hence, an anticipation of the explicit discussions of the emptiness of emptiness to follow. 1. The victorious conqueror has said that whatever is deceptive is false. Compounded phenomena are all deceptive. Therefore they are all false. This is an important verse for any understanding of the relation of the two truths, the conventional and the ultimate, to one another. That relation is vexed because the conventional truth is sometimes referred to as a truth and sometimes as wholly false. Conventional phenomena are sometimes referred to as empirically real and not imaginary, and sometimes as wholly imaginary. So it is important to see that the sense of falsehood in play when the conventional is characterized as false is deceptive. That is, insofar as conventional phenomena present themselves as more than conventional, as inherently existent, they deceive us. We take them to be what they are not, to be intrinsically identified, inherently existent entities. In that sense, they are false. But to the extent that we understand them as dependently arisen, empty, interdependent phenomena, they constitute a conventional truth. Yet one must bear in mind that, according to Nagarjuna, perception untutored by Madhyamaka philosophy and rigorous practice delivers objects to consciousness as inherently existent. In this sense, the things that we see are wholly false. For most of us, the best that we can do is reason our way into knowing, but not seeing, their true nature. The goal of meditation on emptiness is to bring this knowledge into perceptual experience and, hence, to see things as they are. 2. If whatever is deceptive is false, what deceives? The victorious conqueror has said about this that emptiness is completely true. The opponent then asks what we are deceived about. Here is what motivates the question. If there are no real tables, for instance, then when I believe that there is a table in front of me and am therefore deceived, what is deceiving me? We don't want to say that a non-existent phenomenon is pretending to be existent, since it would have to exist in order to pretend. Nagarjuna replies that what actually exists is an empty table. That is not to say, however, that that empty table is inherently existent, only that the correct way to characterize the entity that exists conventionally is as an empty table. That empty table is misperceived by an ordinary mind as a truly existent table. To the extent that it appears as empty, it appears as it truly is. In the first two lines of the next verse, Nagarjuna notes that it is the absence of essence that permits change. 3. All things lack entity-hood, since change is perceived. There is nothing without entity. Because all things have emptiness. It is emptiness that makes change possible. If things had essences, they would be incapable of real change. But since they are seen to change, Nagarjuna argues, they must be empty of essence. The opponent, though, rejoins, since according to Nagarjuna all things are empty, and since this is their ultimate nature, all things in fact do have a kind of entitihood, namely, existence as empty phenomena. Nagarjuna is here anticipating the charge that he has rejected other essences only to posit emptiness as an essence, subject to all of the problems he has already adumbrated for essentialist metaphysics. The opponent then asks, 13, 4, if everything lacks being, and is therefore empty, what could change? Change would seem to have to be change of something, and the doctrine of emptiness seems to rob us of those somethings. Nagarjuna, hence, presents himself, in the voice of the opponent, with a dilemma. He seems to have propounded, his protestations to the contrary notwithstanding, a theory of the essence of all phenomena. That theory, according to this hypothetical objection, is that emptiness just is the essence of all phenomena. He could deny having propounded such a theory, of course. But the consequence of such a denial, the opponent charges, would be no better. For then, the very basis of the argument here offered for emptiness, the reality of change, would have to be rejected. This is because without real entities, there would no longer be a possible subject of change. Nagarjuna replies in the third and fourth lines of 13, for that the opponent has things backward. If there was entitihood, if things were non-empty, change would be impossible. It is emptiness itself that makes change comprehensible. For, if there is no entity, hood, what changes? If there were entity, how could it be correct that something changes? Now Nagarjuna begins a brief explanation of how to understand change in the context of emptiness, and of why entitihood would preclude change. This discussion is certainly grounded in the analysis in Chapter 2, but is more explicitly tied to the doctrine of emptiness at this point in the text. 5. A thing itself does not change. Something different does not change. Because a young man doesn't grow old. And because an old man doesn't grow old either. When we imagine change, we imagine one thing retaining its identity, but changing its properties. But if identity is understood strictly, it is only possible as an internal relation that a thing bears to itself. To the extent that a thing changes, it becomes, strictly speaking, a different thing. But the relation between two things is not the change of a thing, it is simply the difference between two non-changing entities. A young man does not grow old. When he is old, he is no longer a young man. The relation between the young man and the old man is simply the difference of two things. But an old man doesn't grow old either. He is already old. So if change and things that change are thought of non-relationally, we can make no sense of change at all. 6. If a thing itself changed, milk itself would be curd.